So welcome everybody to the Restoring Your Business webinar, brought to you by Wells Fargo in partnership with the US Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. This webinar is part of the R3 Bootcamp Webinar series. In the first two, we share important information and resources on how to retool and recover your business. And today, we will have a conversation with two excellent panelists on how to develop a restoration strategy for your business through long-term access to capital planning and network opportunities. And no worries if you missed the first two webinars, I will be sharing the two video links on the chat and via email as well. We want to remind everyone that this webinar is being recorded and we're also going live on our USHCC Facebook page. So please let us know where are you joining us from by entering a comment on the chat. And remember that you can submit any questions at any time via the Q&A box. For those joining via Facebook, you can submit your question as a comment and we will try to answer all the questions throughout the webinar and at the end of the session. For those joining via Zoom, please know that you can enter a drawing for a $25 gift card by completing our 30-second survey. Yes, 30 seconds that will be sent to you via email after this webinar and that I will be sharing at the end of this webinar as well. So remember that your feedback is very important to keep bringing relevant content for your business. Now, I would love to introduce our CEO and President at the US Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Ramiro Cavazos. Welcome, Ramiro.
Thank you so much, Laura. Muchísimas gracias a ti por tu tremendo trabajo de parte de la Cámara Hispana de Comercio de los Estados Unidos. Thank you so much, Laura, for your outstanding work, being a champion for our Latino and Latino-owned businesses, representing our United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for being a part of our team. It's my pleasure to be here with these two outstanding business leaders on our panel today. Before I briefly kick this back to you, Laura, I wanted to share that we understand at the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce how difficult this past year has been for our nation's small businesses. I want each of you to know that thanks to great corporate partners like Wells Fargo, led by Patty Juarez, and great executive board members like Rosa Santana of the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, that we're working as a united team to put the resources out there in a virtual setting and in person in whatever manner we can to provide the resources to our 5 million Hispanic-owned businesses in America. We are the economic engine of America's future economic growth. In Spanish, the word detonar is not often used to describe the entrepreneurship and the innovation by our Latino and Latino-owned businesses, but detonating our economy is really what we are about. And that is what we're doing today in sharing advice, in sharing real examples of hardship and overcoming the challenges through a real world experience in Rosa Santana, someone that has achieved against all odds great success to create jobs and to create opportunities for our Latino and Latino-owned families. And then thanks to Patty Juarez and Wells Fargo, not only are they funding this series, the Restore, of course, Your Business webinar series, the 3 R's, but Patty herself has been a leader with the Orange County Latino Chamber of Commerce, and also someone that leads the the resource teams within Wells Fargo nationally and globally for Latino employees within their executive sessions within their team. So with that, I just want to say on behalf of our chairwoman, Alice Rodriguez, and our board of directors, our 260 Hispanic chambers, and of course our corporate members and the Hispanic business enterprises that have worked so hard, we are very proud that we have been able to raise $850 billion through the CARES Act and through stimulus programs to provide direct financial assistance to our small businesses. And our job today is to get as much of those dollars to our Latino and Latina-owned businesses because they have not been able to get their fair share And so we need to build that capacity, get them bankable, get them ready, get them to network, get them to not take no for an answer, and to prepare them to be successful in the private sector and the public sector through increased procurement, giving them more business. And that's how we're going to revive our economy and rebuild. So on behalf of our board of directors and our U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, it is my privilege to have each of you join us today for this important session, and also for the honor to work on behalf of our Latino and Latino-owned businesses that represent the best of America's economy and the best of the global economy, since our economy collectively is larger than even the nation of India, which is the second largest country in the world with 1.3 billion people. Our 61 million Latinos and Latinas have a larger economic impact than the nation of India, which is one of the largest economies in the world. So putting things in perspective, without fear, without miedo, sin miedo, tenemos que enfrentar estos problemas de nuestro mundo de hoy, and be confident and see the glasses half full. So thank you in advance, Patty, and thank you, Rosa, in advance. I now will kick this back to Laura, who will get to introduce our two panel members. Then we're going to hear from Patty and get some questions, and she has a great presentation. And then I will have the honor of doing Q&A with our esteemed executive board member, Rosa Santana. Thank you both for accepting to do this today. And Laura, let me kick this back to you. Thank you for the great job you do as an advocate for small business.
Thank you so much, Ramiro. This is wonderful. So now, without further ado, I would love to introduce our two panelists of today's webinar. Both are a great representation of successful Latina leaders in the corporate world, and we're honored to have them join us and share their expertise with all of us today. Our first speaker is Patty Juarez, and she is the National Diverse Segments Director at Wells Fargo. Welcome, Patty. Thank you for being with us today. You're on mute.
I knew I would forget that. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Ramiro, Rosa. It's so great to be here with such amazing company. I'm just so excited to be speaking to our small business owners today and really be talking about recovery. We have been over a year now of this pandemic that has come to impact us all in so many different ways. But needless to say, it's been it's had a tremendous impact on our small business community. And I think estimates point to approximately up to 30% of small businesses could close their doors indefinitely due to the pandemic. So what we want to do today is focus on, restoring and recovering and all of the R's that we can think of, so that we can really help our businesses through this, really unprecedented time. I also just first and foremost want to honor the women here on the panel and that are watching. It is March. It is Women's History Month. We just celebrated Latina Women's Day at the beginning, about 5 days ago, International Women's Day on March 8th, with the theme of I Choose to Challenge. And we all stood up against bias and inequity against women. And so I really just want to honor the women here today. You are tremendous, and the world would not be the same without you. So just a nod to you, the women that are here and listening today. Thank you for being you. A little bit about me. I work at Wells Fargo. I lead our diverse segments platform for the commercial bank, which means I get to spend all my time working on providing service and lending products to diverse-owned companies. We specifically focus around women, Latina business owners and Latino business owners, and Native American. And we are launching this year our segments for African American and Asian business owners. So we're very excited to continue to support minority business owners and be a partner to them in accessing the much needed capital. I'm here just really in celebration of the resilience and the tenacity of our small business community. I really, nobody knew that this pandemic would extend to the, to a year. I mean, everybody thought this would be a couple months and we'd be over this, but businesses have hung on, have, really taken advantage of some of the resources that are out there, some of the government programs, as Ramiro mentioned. And what we're here to do is remind you of what resources you have, but then also just talk about how do you reboot and retool and, get back to business when we've had this, 1 year really kind of where everything has stopped and has changed in so many ways. So just pleased to be here. Thank you, Rosa. It's a pleasure to be a co-panelist with you, my friend. I admire you so much, and thank you so much. And I'm very pleased to be here.
Thank you so much, Patty. I love that introduction, and we're really looking forward to your presentation. And now let me introduce our second panelist of today's webinar. Her name is Rosa Santana, and she is the founder and CEO of the Santana Group and a current member of the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce Executive Board. Thank you so much, Rosa, for taking the time to be with us today.
Of course, thank you. And thank you so much for Patty, thank you to Wells Fargo and to you for your sponsoring, right? These webinars that are so important to our small businesses and for allowing people like myself to share some of what we've done to get through this horrendous pandemic that we've had. I admire everything that Wells Fargo does and how closely you work with the U.S. Hispanic Chamber, whose board and executive board I'm privileged to serve on. So thank you for all of that. Thank you for all of your support in so many ways, right? It's not just monetary support for participating in these sessions. This is so critical and so important. And as you said, there are a lot of tools out there that people may not be aware of regarding, help and how to retool and how to pivot and how to figure out what's your next step and what to do, right? So I hope that today you and I will be able to share some of those with these folks and certainly, maybe serve as role models or perhaps even mentors to help people get through these hard times. A little bit about myself. I was in the corporate world for 20 years prior to becoming an entrepreneur 19 years ago. Fortunately or unfortunately for me, I got downsized from the business that I worked for, and I started my own company. I figured I'd been in the staffing business all of my life, so that's what I knew how to do, and that's what I was very passionate about. So I started a staffing company. Fortunately for me, I've now diversified. Now I'm in staffing, I'm in manufacturing, I own a call center. It is amazing how life, takes us in different directions. But when we think about the purpose that we serve, my purpose has always been to put people to work and to help families become successful and to help people grow like I was allowed to grow in the corporate world and as an entrepreneur. So my mission has always been to help people grow and by providing good employment opportunities to them. So I opened up in El Paso in 2002 and, again, after a great career in corporate America. And then I had an opportunity to expand out to Austin because I landed a pretty large contract there with an Austin-based company. Right after that, I opened up in San Antonio as a staffing business and began providing staffing services to many of the Toyota on-site suppliers here in San Antonio. And so after providing staffing services to these folks at Toyota, these these tier one suppliers at Toyota, we were invited to do something very different, which was assembly work, right, on the manufacturing side. And and I say we because it's not just I that has done all of this, right? My team is a big part of everything that we've done. We became the first woman-owned direct tier 1 supplier to Toyota, which is something that, you know, still I pinch myself when I think about that. It is a true honor because Toyota is an amazing company, an amazing tier 1, an amazing OEM that treats their tier 1s, tier 2s, tier 3 suppliers amazingly. So very, very privileged to call myself the first Hispanic woman-owned tier 1 supplier to them. And I hope I'm not the last, right? Because I would love to see more people like myself, more women, more Latinas in these roles, right? Then we expanded into Mexico with Toyota as well. So we've got a plant in Mexico, in Guanajuato, Mexico, which now, you know, we're in full production. They're doing really, really well. Then, you know, my BPO company, Oveana, in 2018, opened up a call center in El Paso. And so we now provide call center services to companies, and Toyota is one of our customers as well. And now, you know, so now, as you can see, we operate 5 companies under the Santana Group name, and on both sides of the border. So it's been a very interesting year for us, needless to say, because we've dealt with everything you can imagine through this pandemic on either side of the border. So we can talk more about it. I know, Laura, that we need to move on, but I'll talk more about it as we answer the questions that Ramiro has for us. Thank you all very much for joining us here today, and we look forward to answering some of your questions as well.
Thank you so much, Rosa. That was fantastic. I'm honored to be surrounded by 2 talented Latinas that have achieved so much, really. And while I'm sharing my screen right now, I want to remind everyone that you can start submitting your questions via the Q&A box at any time, and we'll answer them at the end of this presentation. Can you all please confirm that you can see the slides, number 1?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Patty, I think the stage is yours now.
Thank you, Laura. Well, again, it is such a privilege to be here supporting our small business community. It is something that is one of the main focuses at Wells Fargo, and I think it is important to support particularly our Latino small business community, because it is by all accounts the fastest growing, and certainly Latinas have come to be the fastest growing segment in the entire world. And so Latinas are really getting just so entrepreneurial and starting businesses, and we have to help these businesses stay afloat during this pandemic. And as Ramiro said, with 5 million Hispanic-owned businesses that you support, we think it's very important to have you know, more information that you can leverage in order to weather the storm as we are, you know, kind of nearing hopefully the end of this pandemic. So we'll go ahead and get started. Laura, if we can go to the next page. Let's talk about Paycheck Protection Program. I mean, that is something that's been obviously near and dear to our hearts for a while now, and it's been a main artery and lifeline to business owners to stay afloat during this time of need. And many businesses access the Paycheck Protection Program, the first round, a while back, you know, closer to the start of the pandemic, to try to keep their employees employed, to try to make payroll. Those were very critical and important things. We were trying to help the small business community, obviously the SBA and other financial institutions that participated in the program we were trying to get money in the hands of business owners as fast as possible. As fast as you can be, given that, you know, we had to go through a lot of regulatory and obvious setups that we needed to do to enable the application process for the business community. But many of you accessed the Paycheck Protection Program. These were low interest loans backed and approved by the SBA. But the key to those loans is that they could be entirely or partially, depending on your paperwork, forgiven if you use the money for the intended purposes and approved expenses, right? And so things such as payroll and rent and lease payments, as well as interest and business mortgage interest and other expenses, you could use that money. And if you did it all as intended, then the forgiveness process would kick in, where you would apply for forgiveness. And that started a while back now, where you could apply, depending on how long your draw period was for your loan, you could apply for forgiveness. And that process is going on now, and you have to apply through the bank that gave you the loan. You have to apply for the forgiveness piece, and it's likely an electronic type of application, and you have to submit, obviously, the evidence and paperwork of how you utilize the funding. And if that is all good and in order, then your loan would be forgiven, right? And so again, this was a way to support businesses towards the beginning of the pandemic. And then we thought, oh yes, we'll cover 2 or 2.5 months of payroll. And then by the end of that time, everything will be back to normal. And lo and behold, this thing started to drag out a lot longer than we all anticipated. So the government then came together to put together a second stimulus package, right? And so there was now there is a round PPP2, we call it, you know, Paycheck Protection Program Part 2, and that program is currently available for folks to apply. And it's the eligibility, if you already had a Paycheck Protection Program loan for round 1, you're eligible to apply again. You also, if you didn't have a loan in the first round, you're still eligible to apply for a round of funding in the second round. And as Ramiro mentioned, unfortunately, our minority business community, even though the intent was there for them to obviously take advantage of these programs, the Center for Responsible Lending tells us that only about 10 or 15% of people really took advantage, you know, of the intended resources in our minority communities. And that is a very low number. I think we obviously all worked really hard to try to make things accessible, but you know, there were maybe some barriers at some point in time that didn't allow all the business owners that we would have wanted to see apply for these funds. So let's take advantage of round 2 and make sure that, you know, you can either get a second draw if you got a first loan, or a brand new loan that covers, you know, roughly another 2.5 months worth of your expenses. And again, it's got the same features whereby if you use it for its intended purposes, it'll be entirely forgivable once you enter into the forgiveness process. If you, you know, in order for you to apply for these loans, you have to do them through your main bank, the bank that you have your checking accounts established with. In order to get these funds to business owners as quickly as possible, I think banks took the position that we already need to have had all your paperwork, right, and known you, so that we could, you know, really expedite the process of getting these PPP loans. Because if you recall, it's first come, first serve, and when the funds run out, then that's it. And so we required our customers to have been obviously in operation since February of 2020. And we also required that they have an eligible account with us. And so that's kind of the process, because you access the loan application as well as the forgiveness process through our portals. And I think, Laura, you had the next slide up, which is our SBA Paycheck Protection Program landing page. And Laura is going to share all these links with you guys. So hopefully you don't have to take copious notes as I speak with the links, but she'll share them. This is our landing page where you go in to apply for your PPP loan, and it talks, there's so many, there's an FAQ area, there's an area that tells you about the program, about the loans, what the money should be used for, the type of documentation you're going to need, everything you need to know. And we have it in English y en Español. So you have that information there at your fingertips. And please do take advantage of that if you haven't yet. The next slide shows you our Forgiveness Center, which, you know, all of the folks that applied for round 1 of the PPP program should be entering into that forgiveness process at this point. And obviously you'll need to go there once you satisfy all the requirements from your second draw or second loan and you're ready to apply for forgiveness. But the forgiveness process, there's definitely some information that needs to be submitted. You need to start that process with the lender that processed your PPP loan. And typically, at least for us at Wells, we have this as an online application and process just to ensure that, you know, we capture everything and we do it in the most expeditious way. And you can see there our Forgiveness Center that Laura's showing you on the screen that has a really comprehensive set of instructions on what you need to do and the documentation that you need to provide that we then in turn submit to the SBA to receive your forgiveness. And so that is the process in terms of PPP and PPP2. My advice to you is take full advantage of the programs, get your documentation in order, make sure you have all of your expenses and receipts and, you know, proof of where you spend the money so that you have a very smooth forgiveness application. Okay, so I'll move to the next slide, Laura, and I want to talk about how Wells Fargo is supporting business owners. So we had nearly a couple 100,000 applications for PPP loans, and the SBA paid the banks a fee for every loan that we processed. Wells Fargo took in over $400 million in loan fees from the first round of Paycheck Protection Program. And instead of taking that money into our, you know, coffers and having that profit for us, what we decided to do was to donate the processing fees from our participation in the program to the Open for Business Fund. So we established a fund in our foundation that would be set up to really help the communities that really got left behind from the process, but also, you know, just anybody who was in need, any small business that was in need of additional support in trying to get through this pandemic. So what we focused these funds on were a few things. Providing access to capital, obviously to small business owners, and if they weren't necessarily bankable through us, we did a number of partnerships with CDFIs, whereby we gave them grants to then in turn turn around and help small businesses with grants and loans and emergency, you know, maybe their interest payments so that it could be covered. They did a number of things, the CDFIs, through our Open for Business funding that really went to help small businesses. So you can see here, we deployed so far in 2020, what we did was 84 million of that 400 was deployed with CDFIs. We also deployed money to other areas such as helping the struggling small business community, helping those people be able to, you know, keep jobs. And so we set up a number of programs that supported the business owners in addition to those funds that came through the CDFIs that were in the shape of a grant or of paying down your interest or offering zero cost loans to you. And so we really tried to support the entrepreneurs that we knew were working so hard to stay afloat, and we know they still are. And the resiliency that these business owners have shown in really staying afloat is amazing, And that's what, gives me so much hope in the end, is that we will come out of this stronger than ever. Businesses have learned to operate under a very lean environment. They have pivoted in such amazing and fantastic ways. They have redone their whole business plan, many business owners. They have looked at all the options, going online, providing takeout services, doing more, things that really creative ways to continue to provide a service or, a product, and yet stay afloat given the depressed business circumstances that they're facing. And so the Open for Business Fund really just helps us help organizations that are supporting small businesses, that are there to support your operations, the needs that you have. And what we have seen is that the tenacity and resiliency of these business owners is what's going to pull us out of this mess. I cannot even imagine the circumstances that folks have. I have personally witnessed, folks that have restaurants, that have, different types of businesses that are in hospitality or, services, that have had just a phenomenal amount of impact, and how the businesses have remained viable, and how they have really come out of the other end with more creativity, resilience, strength is unbelievable. So I am very heartened by the condition of our businesses, despite the fact that some of them will end up closing. I think what we are trying to do is minimize the number of closures that are caused by this pandemic, and really help in many ways, however we can, that, support your growth. And in many ways, we have seen so many businesses actually thrive during the pandemic. If you're all of a sudden pivoted and you're making masks, or you're, making a sanitizer, or you're, doing things that are so necessary during these times, your business is thriving. And so many folks took the opportunity to pivot, turn, and say what's needed, and I'm going to just, approach that business opportunity. So we're just, so in awe of the resiliency of the business community, particularly the Latino business community. I think that because we are such entrepreneurs and we have the largest growth segment, we are the most impacted. Many folks in our community, not only are their businesses impacted, but many folks in our community are frontline folks. And so, the health impact, the financial impact that this pandemic has had has been tremendous. And so whatever we can do to assist our community is what we're going to do. And you can see on the next page, Laura, another way in which we are also supporting the minority business community. We established a $175 million program, our Diverse Community Capital Fund. And this is to give small businesses access to capital, as well as technical assistance, by teaming up with select CDFIs across the 50 states, Washington and Puerto Rico. And since we set this fund up, and this was pre-COVID when we set this up, our program has helped over 90 CDFIs finance $1.6 billion in lending. Again, this is pre-pandemic. We were already working in partnership with these CDFIs. And so it just made so much more sense, right? That with the pandemic, these funds have become even more important. And we've enabled diverse entrepreneurs to sustain their businesses and to keep over almost 200,000 jobs from being lost. And so anything that we can do, and frankly, all corporations that are in this business should support any effort to, keep jobs, retain and help companies stay open and stay afloat. And so we take that as a very, serious goal of our organization. And that makes me incredibly proud that we can bring these resources to bear for my Latino business community. It's like a dream for me. So the next slide, what I want to transition to is how we're helping and how we can help with your transition, your retooling, anything that you need to do with your business to kind of withstand this. We've built a resource center, a small business resource center. And Laura will share the links with you. It's small business resources.wellsfargo.com. And what we have done is we have helped put this even more resource into this business center to help businesses adapt and rebuild during COVID-19. So our focus is on engaging and re-engaging our customers, frankly, on how, all of the things that a small business needs to be aware of and needs to know. You'll find that content to be very substantial and helpful. We talked about, your journey in response to COVID-19. In our content hub, you have all kinds of interesting topics on, what are specific steps and actions and things you should be thinking about in order to continue to operate, and then in order to really expand and thrive. We have articles that are focused on what your customers can do, or what you can do with your customers. Any kind of change that you may want to consider in accommodating, those customers. Like I said, the pivoting and the resilience of, really kind of throwing the business plan out the window and redoing what you need to do to capture some of the opportunity. Anything like that, you will find resources in this business center that will give you a lot of food for thought and information. And we know that there's a lot of information out there, probably more. All you have to do is Google COVID resources and you're going to find, thousands of pages of data and information. But what we tried to do here is streamline it for you, have it in one place, one site that has many resources, webinars, tools, etc. And all the information is in one place. So it's aimed at being simplicity and boiling it down to what you really need to adapt and rebuild following this unprecedented period of the pandemic. And so whatever personally I can do through Wells Fargo to support your needs, our company, we're a phone call away. We're here to support you. And that's my formal presentation, but I'm excited to take any questions that you guys may have.
Thank you so much, Patty. That's extremely helpful. I actually have a couple questions, but I would like to start with just a very basic one. How to start the application of my loan forgiveness.
Yes, thank you, Laura. So you have to start the process with the bank that issued your loan. So you have to go back to the issuing bank, and most banks have established their own process to start the forgiveness applications. Most of us have the portals, right? Like you saw what we have created, where you can go online and start the process. It will walk you through what we need in order to get that information to the SBA. It will walk you through what documentation you need, all of the things. What's important is to have your ducks in a row, to have all the data that supports the expenses on how do you utilize the funding. The key is to have all of that data, your accountant or your bookkeeper, to have all those expenses that were covered so that you can provide the backup of that to the bank. And then, we'll help you fill out and complete the application online. And then that we then turn around and submit it to the SBA. We obviously make sure that everything is completed properly, and then we submit it to the SBA in terms of the forgiveness process. And there are two actually applications, one for loans under 50,000. That's kind of the easy application form. It's more streamlined. It's a shorter process. So anybody whose loan was under 50,000 can utilize the expedited process. And then anybody whose loan is greater than that will still support you and walk you through exactly what you're going to need. But there's definitely more information that's required for those. But ideally, you know, once you finish that application process, then you'll receive notification that your loan has been entirely forgiven. And in the cases that it wasn't entirely forgiven, where you did not have enough documentation to back up all the expenses, it could be 90% forgiven, 80% forgiven. You know, you'll get told what percentage of that would be forgiven based on the documentation that you submitted.
Excellent. And someone is asking, is Diverse Community Capital Fund forgivable?
So the Diverse Community Fund, Capital Fund, is monies that we grant to the CDFIs that they in turn give to the business owners. And there's a few ways that they're deciding to utilize that, whether it could be directly through a grant or directly through maybe forgiveness of interest, whatever it is that it's most needed for that particular borrower is how they will support it. So if it's in the form of a grant, then that's obviously not a loan. So that is entirely a grant. But it just depends on what your arrangement is with a CDFI.
Great. And another question from Maria de Gregorio is that she would like to know more about the new fund specific for restaurants. Some info about application dates and requirements. Is that on the website that you were sharing with us? Or maybe you can just let us know if there is a specific link with additional information, or you, of course.
Yeah, there's some information in our PPPP, but what I was going to tell you is that specifically, normally, right, for any kind of PPP loan, we're covering about 2.5 months of monthly expenses, payroll and related expenses. But for businesses in the food services industry, accommodations, so those are businesses that got hit particularly hard by the pandemic, you can actually apply for 3.5 months worth of relief. And so that's very important. That gives you an extra month, right, of expense relief in terms of your PPPP eligibility.
Okay, well, those are great news. And I think the deadline that we have for the PPP is just March 31, right? Just March 31st. So just keep that in mind, start applying and get all that information ready. I think that they can also go to the bank, right, with all their tax information.
Absolutely.
Start the process.
Absolutely. Depending on how you have to familiarize yourself with how your bank is processing PPPs. There's certainly folks that are doing it still the old-fashioned way on paper and whatnot and faxing things. But there's definitely a lot that are doing it online, trying to make it easier and accessible for people. But March 31st is the deadline. We don't know if the SBA is going to grant an extension depending on how much funding's gone out from the allocated funds. We have seen sometimes there's been extensions, but you can't count on that. So let's just ensure that, you get your application in before the due date so that you can be eligible for as big of a loan as, as depending on your industry and your business. But the banks will help size up the loan that you're eligible for based on the expenses. So there's definitely assistance you will receive from your banking partner on that.
Great. And just the last question before we pass to Rosa, can you share with the group 3 characteristics you feel Hispanic women need to position themselves to succeed and soar to the new heights as they start and grow and scale their businesses?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I think Latinas have amazing characteristics, many that are exhibited on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. But I think that a couple that are really relevant in this time is tenacity, right? Because we are in such a tumultuous environment. Resiliency, because right now, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And so we have to fight. And I just think, one characteristic that is a hallmark of Latinas is just the warmth, you know, the way we are, just our ability to connect with others and our ability to care, frankly, for others is an inherent trait that I know I was instilled that from my abuela and my mother. And you know, when you do things with heart and care, and you know, everything really just happens because you believe in it. And so I think that we as Latinas, and during this time where many things have come on our plates, right? Not only do we have businesses or we have professional careers, but now our kids are learning from home. So we have another hat we wear as teachers. And guess what? We got to cook a lot more because, you know, we're eating at home. And guess what? We don't have anybody to help with all the things in the house. So we have our housekeeper hat on. I mean, we wear so many hats, and we are literally the heart in our familias that keeps everything going. And so what I would say to my Latina sisters is also make time for you and take care of you. Your whole world will come and crumble if, you know, because you do so many things if you're not well. And I think that, you know, one of the things that we do that's also kind of an inherent trait of Latinas is we just keep going and going and giving and giving and giving. And we never say no. And it's just, you keep it up. And next thing you know, hey, heart health for women, you know, it's the #1 killer of women. And we take on stress very differently. And so we have to take care of ourselves. Do something for you that allows you to take care of your families, take care of everybody that you take care of, keep all the balls in the air juggling, take care of you. For me personally, have taken on through COVID, I go out for a walk 3 to 5 miles every single day. I go out for a walk, I clear my head, I kind of think about the things I have to do. And I am so much more efficient and effective if I do have that space, right, for myself. And I also feel better. I feel more, you know, healthier and with more energy, and I can be better. I can be a better mom. I can be a better partner for my husband. I can be a better human and frankly, a better employee at Wells Fargo. And so I'd say, you know, definitely keep up your tenacity, keep up your resiliency, keep up your heart and everything you do, but take care of yourself.
What a great closure for these wonderful presentations. Thank you so much, Patty, for joining us today. It has been fantastic to hear from you and getting all that advice. I share all those links from Wells Fargo on the chat, but I'll be sending all those resources as well via email after this webinar. So thank you so much, Patty. And now I would love to invite Ramiro and Rosa Santana, and they will be offering advice and tips to business owners on how to restore their business through strategic planning and through a very interesting Q&A session.
Thank you, Laura. And Patty, thank you for speaking of heart, from your heart, sharing the professional financial counsel that you just gave to all of our participants, not just on this Zoom call, but also throughout social media, through Facebook Live. So Patty, thank you for being a part of our familia, and also for really the advice that you gave us to take care of ourselves, and for the tremendous work that Wells Fargo has done. We would not be where we are today as a chamber, as Rosa knows, without the investment and support of Wells Fargo in the U.S. Hispanic Chamber and in our National Hispanic Chamber Network and our small businesses. We mean that from the bottom of our heart. So muchísimas gracias, Patty, for everything you've done for us and for being a part of investing in this program for our small businesses.
Ramiro, it is just a tremendous pleasure. You know how much I am fond of this chamber and the work that we do. I got to say, we're so fortunate to have your leadership and our board of directors with people like Rosa on it. We're really set up for success in supporting these 5 million business owners that need our help. It's a pleasure from Wells Fargo's perspective to be of assistance to our business owners, and the partnership couldn't be better. We so appreciate your support when we have had the need to have you advocate for us. You have done it and you have been there. And so it is a partnership of many years now that we look forward to many, many more years to come. So thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Well, I am so blessed at this time to introduce a tremendous business leader, but also a dear friend. I remember the day when Rosa Santana came to see me in San Antonio when I ran the Hispanic Chamber there. And she had already been in business for many years, and she had made a big decision to expand her business to San Antonio and physically move her home from El Paso. She still has a home in El Paso, but she was going to increase her presence, her physical presence in a completely new city. One she was very familiar with, but where I know her family had a strong footprint already. And so I just want to thank you, Rosa, for really your life's work. I've known you for more than 10 years personally, and I know that she stands for integrity, for transparency, and also tremendous ganas. And when I think of Rosa, I don't think her as just a woman business owner. I think her as an American business leader that happens to be a Latina. And so thank you, Rosa, for everything you've given to our community and for the support you gave us in San Antonio. And little did I know that years later, I would have the privilege of working for our United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Never in my wildest dreams would I imagine that heart that Patty, you have, and Wells Fargo has, that we would be able to work together as a team with a great leader like Rosa Santana, and for me to have the humility to work alongside Laura and our team to do this important work. And so Rosa and I will have a conversation. And so I have some questions that similar to Patty, the questions you were answering, that we're going to talk. And Rosa has a lot of advice to share because she has that real world experience that it has kept her and her business growing and going during this period. Rosa, before I ask you your first question, I want to share that I've been watching the chat. We have people from New York to Los Angeles, from Pueblo to Houston, all over the country that have been listening to our discussion today. And many of them are entrepreneurs and business leaders. And so I just want to say, Rosa, thank you in advance for giving us a little history earlier. But I wanted to really say I have four big questions. You know, one has to do with capital, one with communication, one is conviction, the ganas that we talked about, and then continuous improvement. You're very familiar with Toyota as a tier 1 supplier, and Kaizen is the continuous improvement. And all of this complements the need for capital and small business advice that Patty has just given us. And you complement this with what you've been going through and then your life story. So tell us, I know in your own words, that story of the Santana Group. And so it'll be something that I know you can share within these four questions. And obviously we'll try to get to other questions too. We're on schedule, we're on time. So let me keep us on schedule and say that, Rosa, thank you again for being here. My first question to you, Rosa, and of course you share other thoughts as you answer these. What's your advice for business owners that are listening and also on social media who are struggling right now to find access to funding, especially capital, when resources are so scarce? You know, you have had to live this every day and still are living it. So Rosa, give us your thoughts, your consejos about, you know, how a business owner who struggles can continue to keep those doors of opportunity open for access to resources when, you know, it looks like it's daunting and it's limited. So Rosa, to you, thank you in advance for your advice.
Ramiro, first of all, thank you so much for all of your kind words. I still remember that day that I showed up in your office and asked you to allow me to be on this, and this, and you helped me tremendously as a new leader in San Antonio. And so we're privileged to have you at the leadership, at the helm of the United States Hispanic Chamber. Thank you for the work that you do there, and to the team. And Patty, you did a phenomenal job. Thank you for sharing all of the things that Wells Fargo is doing, for your passion really to help Hispanic-owned businesses, and for your passion for Latinas and helping Latina-owned businesses. Thank you for that. So Ramiro, let me go back and answer your question. As you know, I sit on the board for LBAN, Latino Business Action Network, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and LBAN collaborates with the Stanford School of Business to champion the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative, which is SLAY, right? You may be familiar with the study that was, introduced, I believe, late January this year, and every year since then, that talks a lot about, the state of Latino entrepreneurship. And obviously, that this particular study has everything to do with last year and what happened to Latino-owned businesses last year. And, in particular, what one of the biggest issues is access to capital, right? And Patty, we heard all of the great things that your bank is doing, but the research shows very interestingly, right, that Latino-owned businesses are almost at a disadvantage. When you're looking at when all things are equal, right? And, we're trying to access capital. Latino-owned businesses are 60% lower. The odds of Latinos getting loans are 60% lower than white-owned businesses. That is part of our research. And it is, when you think about it, 60% lower, that's huge. You talk, Patty, about how fast we're growing as a community, the Latino-owned community. You talk about it every day, Ramiro. Women-owned businesses, yet we're still at this disadvantage. And unfortunately, it's with the larger banks. I'm not going to name any of the banks because I don't believe that we're highlighting anybody, but it's with the larger banks. So, when you start thinking about where do I go for funding, right? How do I stay in business, and where do I go for funding? I can tell you that one of the things that I learned very early on in my life as an entrepreneur was that I better have my stuff together. Patty, you talked about this. You talked about being ready with your data, right? I talk about that every single day in my business. Bookkeeping and ensuring that all of your finances are in place and in order for when something like this happens and you have to access a PPP loan or you have to go to somebody to borrow. That is critical. That is really critical. And having come from, large organizations where, I worked for a big corporation, and, the only way I knew how to do business was like a big business. And so I'm so grateful for that experience, because when I started my company, I started thinking, this is the way we have to run the business, right? And all of these years later, obviously, it's really helped me tremendously and helped us with how we access capital. So, charting a path, to access capital and to achieve healthy financials before you need them is critical. Before you need them. You can't wait until the pandemic hits or the recession occurs or, the layoff comes like it did for me, right? You have to do all of this before. So it's all of the planning prior to that you need to do. And sometimes it's a chore. You know, I meet with my CFO and our accounting folks once a month, and we go through every single P&L for each of my companies and ensure that I understand as the owner, you know, where are we on everything, and you know, what loans do we have outstanding, and why can't we pay off those loans, and why can't we bring, you know, those balances down, and that it's so critical. And you know, even though I have a CFO and he has accountants that work for him and all of that, I'm the owner of the business. I better know where we are, right? So that is critical. I'm glad that you touched on that, Patty. You know, and of course, depending on the business that you have, your growth potential, your growth opportunities, what your plans are, you know, there are different areas to find, you know, financing, as you mentioned. You know, one of the things that has worked for me really greatly is building relationships with the financial, you know, organizations that I choose to do business with, right? For me, aside from my family and my business partner, my banker's probably the one that knows me the most intimately, right? They know all the good, bad, and ugly about me. And that's just the way it is, right? You know, for me, you know, I happen to work with a regional bank. And I've worked with big banks, and I've worked with, you know, smaller banks, where I have found the best opportunity for my business my businesses to continue to grow are through my regional bank. You know, I have a banker, his name is Noah Garcia, and I'm giving him a shout out here because he's the best. Honestly, he takes such good care of us, you know, and he is there for me anytime I need him. The answers the phone, just like you talked about, Patty. You know, we've got to be there for our people. You know, he's there for us all the time. If my CFO calls, if my daughter calls, if I call, you know, Noah is right there and taking our call. That is critical. That's the kind of relationship that I believe, at least in my case, has made a big difference in how ready I am for a pandemic or a recession or a growth opportunity in the business, right? I mean, I prepare for the great stuff, right? I prepare for the growth, but I think because of all of the things that we've learned to do through the years and having the background that I have, we automatically are preparing always for the bad times, right? Trust me, we didn't think, who would have thought, right, that anything like the pandemic would hit. And I'm going to tell you right now, the first thing that I did is I got with my CFO and I said, okay, let's look at our receivables. Who owes us money and how much do they owe us? And let's make sure we start collecting now. Because, you know, in bad times, what happens, right? People want to hold on to their cash. They want to hold on to their money, and they're going to say, well, maybe we can stretch it out a little bit longer or whatever. I was like, we better work these like crazy. And we did. Ironically, I think our aging of any sort, right, looks the best now than it ever did. Not that we ever had issues, because that's been something, you know, that's been one of our successes, I guess. One of our advantages is that we've always had a priority on working, you know, our aging, right, or our receivables. So it's been very, very interesting, and for us, it helped a lot. The other thing is cash flow, right? You know, make sure that you understand, you know, who you can keep on and for how long, by understanding how much cash do you need? What cash do you need? And where are you going to get that cash from, right? Can you afford it? You know, do you need, you know, a loan? Call your banker, right? He should be right there with you. So those are the things that have worked for us. Now, you know, there are CDFIs that, you know, you mentioned. You all have funded, you have provided grants to some of these CDFIs. I'm really happy to hear that, because CDFIs are another source of capital, of financing for small businesses, and that's really important. And, you know, if you don't know what a CDFI is, it's an organization that provides, you know, capital and dollars for small, underserved communities, underserved businesses. So there, you know, may not be explaining it correctly, but I know I've learned a lot about CDFIs lately, and I think it's another source of potential funding for small businesses, right? But again, you know, when you go to a bank, you better be ready to explain, right? If you haven't been paying people on time, why you haven't, how are you going to make it, you know, different this time? Why are you going to pay me, the bank, you know, on time if you haven't been meeting all of your obligations? Or, you know, on the other hand, if you've been doing really, really well, that your chances are going to be greater, right? Credit is, you know, I mean, gold, right? You know, if you have great credit, hopefully you're not going to have as many issues. But I might have talked a little much, Ramiro,
No.
but those are the good, very
That
good.
that is perfect, Rosa. Thank you. We want this to be interactive and a conversation. And you're right. Patty shared that we need to be ready as small business owners when we go to the bank. And one of the things we learned through this pandemic is that relationship that you mentioned that you have with the amazing Noah Garcia is one that only 50% of those 5 million Hispanic-owned businesses that were caught in the pandemic really had with regional banks or with good banks like Wells Fargo. And if that relationship isn't in place and you don't have your records ready to go, you know, it's a big challenge. And that's what Patty was referencing, but that's the relationship, Rosa, that you have just stressed is important for business success. So thank you very much. And Rosa, before I ask you the next question, you are on the board of the Stanford Leadership program that you were referencing. We have one of our viewers has put it, Scott has put it, your colleague, on the chat. And then I do want to share your homegirl, Cindy Ramos Davidson is tuning in, and I think she may have a question later on for us. So we've got people from all over the country. Welcome to everyone, and welcome to Cindy, a great CEO of the El Paso Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Rosa, thank you for that great answer and that advice. My next question is communication. You talked about always anticipating. And the next question is this. As you know, it's second nature to go on defensive when there are economic downturns. And Rosa, you have seen several during your career. And as we scale back our marketing and outreach as a business owner to obviously cut costs, that's usually the first thing that is cut by small businesses. What are your thoughts and your advice to small business owners who still need to do outreach and marketing, right? Even though that's an effort that's been cut back during times when, you know, there are economic downturns, Rosa. What would be your advice be to small business owners who may not have big budgets or have cut them back to keep your presence out there?
Great question, Ramiro. Thank you for that question. So, you know, I think expanding your concept of marketing and what, you know, marketing is. Marketing isn't just purchasing a space in a magazine or anything like that, right? So, you know, everything that we do in our business or with our business is marketing, right? Who we are as people, you know, and who we are as human beings. We're a representation of our business, right? We are, you know, the image that is created for our business. So, you know, maintaining a positive brand visibility internally and externally is critical. And when I mean internally, you know, you've got to have a great image, not just with the, you know, with the external folks that could be your customers, your bankers, your, you know, other leaders in your communities, but also with your own internal teams, right? It's really important that they see the same person that the outside world sees. I believe that, you know, totally. I think staying involved in the community, you know, one of the things that I saw through the pandemic and I continue to see is how everybody pivoted and how much is happening through Zoom and through all of this virtual world that we knew so little about, right? And we're probably totally unprepared for. And you know what, diving right into it, I can tell you that our marketing team here dove right into doing more social media, ensuring that that we, you know, I had constant communication with all of my teams through videos. The other day, I was kind of looking through my phone, and I saw these videos and videos that I was sending to my teams weekly, right? And there were different videos for each one of my businesses because I was addressing different things. But as an example, you know, we had one that I was sending to my manufacturing teams, and about, you know, first I announced that, you know, we were, you know, shutting down for 8 weeks. And but during those 8 weeks, I probably put out 10 or 12 videos, just telling them how we were doing, what they should be thinking about, how we wanted to encourage them, and always to ask for help if they needed anything. And that kept us connected. That was so critical. So when you think about marketing, right, it's not just about, oh, you know, I'm going to keep, you know, ads in the paper, or in the magazine, or I'm going to continue to do, and we did a lot of social media, but it's really about marketing within your teams as well. I myself, you know, have participated in many events like this, many during COVID. And, you know, not only has it helped, hopefully has helped, you know, the audience, but it's helped me tremendously. Just to know that I am imparting, you know, some of me and some of what I've learned through the pandemic, and some of what I've learned through the recession, you know, in 2008, and through my own personal challenges when I was downsized and ended up starting my own business. You know, it's been a real pleasure to know that I've made an impact on some people because they've reached out and they stay in touch with me and they want me to mentor them. That is critical, right? We're human beings, and that connection to other human beings is so important and so critical. So, you know, I see a lot of this that we're doing today as a great marketing opportunity for us in our businesses. You know, how often do you have an opportunity to have, you know, this or do this at a national level with the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce? So, you know, when Laura was trying to pin me down for a date, because, you know, of course, we're busy running our businesses, she was relentless. She didn't leave me, you know, to you know, say no. Thank you, Laura, for that. You know, I appreciate it, but I appreciate more the opportunity to share some of these experiences with everybody. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, no, that is fantastic, Rosa. Thank you.
Great. You're welcome.
Thank you, Laura, for your tenacity in securing both Patty and of course Rosa for our great panel today. I also want to welcome. I know, Rosa, maybe as you answer the next question, you know, you are a family-run business. You have two amazing leaders and two daughters, and you're building a set of companies under the Santana Group for the future, for multiple generations of your family. I also know those videos that you send. I want to say that it goes without saying that the skill that you bring to the table is that you do those messages in both English and Spanish, because
That's
you have
correct.
operations on both sides of the border. And that's what I love to tell. Speaking of family, I love to tell my teenage boys that they need to hone that skill of speaking a second language, which is their mother tongue in Spanish, because it's a business skill. It's not just a cultural attachment because their last name happens to be Cavazos or Santana. And so that's an important message for business success. And so, Rosa, it leads to my next question, which is about conviction, and building off of what you just shared. You know, we always see people playing it safe throughout these difficult times through this pandemic. And it also makes sense at face value but I also know that, you know, we're taught to stick with a sure bet when the going gets tough. But I also know that the rules change on us sometimes, and sometimes you have to go with your instincts. And as a business owner, you've had to maintain your businesses through 2 economic recessions now. And and even launching your first company, you mentioned it earlier, after being downsized, how difficult that was. And so my question to you is, how have you and your businesses responded to this uncertainty? I know you've touched on it too, but share maybe, you know, how you have dealt with that inner conviction that you bring to everything that you do.
So Ramiro, you're correct. You know, it hasn't been rosy. It's been quite challenging, but you know, I think we've come a long way, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that, you know, I believe in myself, I believe in my team, and you know, if I'm going to ever go down, I'm going to go down swinging. I always tell people that, right? You know, I mean, if you think about it, right? If you are so passionate about what you do, and I am very passionate, I mentioned it earlier, I'll mention it again. You know, my whole life's mission has been to help people, put them to work, help companies, you know, connect the people with the company and the need of the company. Now, you know, I employ so many more people in so many different areas, right, geographic areas, but also in different industries now. So for me, you know, the fact that, you know, I seem to have this built-in self-confidence, and perhaps it's because, you know, of a lot of the odds that I beat throughout the years since I was a kid and came to the US from Mexico, and, you know, long story, but I'm not even going to go into that. But I think that the most important thing for me is me believing in myself. So, you know, I've taken a lot of risk, and, you know, in diversifying my business, but, you know, why wouldn't I, right? You know, pivoting my business and, you know, getting into a whole new industry when you're given an opportunity that's really comes once in a lifetime, right? You know, I went from staffing to manufacturing, and it's almost like, how do I do this? Or how would I not do this, right? For me, it was second nature to say, yes, I can do this. You know, I think during 2008 and that recession, you know, people were laying off like crazy. You know that, Ramiro. You know what I did? I hired people. I hired people and spent a tremendous amount of time training people to do the work that I knew was coming after the recession. You know, people were looking at me. My own daughters were saying, Mom, really, we're hiring people? And I said, you know what? When things come back, they're going to come back so strong that we're going to need the talent. And I'd rather build the talent when things are done than wait until they're not done. Now, could we afford it? You know, we did okay. We were still alive, right? Was it a big risk? Absolutely, because obviously we didn't know when things were going to get better. But I'll tell you what, that paid off tremendously for me. The other thing that I did during that recession was I saw an office for lease that had been half built already. And you know, it was when Toyota, everybody was shut down, and Nicole, my daughter, and I were driving out there, and we thought, you know, that looks like an interesting place to put an office, right? You know, right across the street from Toyota. Why wouldn't we want to do that? And so I called, and the guy says, oh, well, you know, everything's shut down and we don't know when it's going to come back. This is a guy advertising to rent the space, right? And I'm like, well, I'm interested. And he says, well, why would you be interested? There's no business out there. And I said, well, I'm interested. And I said, you know, if you can make me a really, really good deal, I'll sign a 5-year lease. And he must have thought I was nuts, right? Because I did. I mean, I got one heck of a deal, and I signed a lease for 5 years. And when everything came back, I was ready with people, I was ready with space, and I had hundreds of orders to fill for my clients. So that's a kind of risk that, you know, as an entrepreneur, I think a lot of times we take them without even thinking about how am I going to finance, how am I, you know, all I had in mind was what my customers' needs were going to be. And, you know, I really love to say that today I own that building. Not only did I rent the building, you know, for some time, we ended up buying the building because we needed more space, and it made a lot of sense to buy it instead of continuing to pay somebody else, you know, to rent it. So, it was a great opportunity. But, you know, so similarly through the beginning of COVID, you know, our plant was shut down. So my manufacturing business was completely down, both in the US and in Mexico. My staffing business was fledgling, right? Some companies were needing more people because, as you mentioned, Patty, they were doing well through the pandemic, right? But a lot of other companies were not doing well. So some of my customers grew, some of them contracted. So we had a big shift. One of my companies, my call center, was growing tremendously. I mean, our customer was taking a tremendous amount of calls and directing more and more calls to us. Basically, it was, we'll direct as many as you can take, right? So that we were growing, and we had to turn around and basically deploy, you know, 90%, I think 70 to 90% of our people to go home, which meant we had to move fast and buy equipment, basically set up all of our employees with equipment and everything to work from home. Now, you know, it was a big chance we were taking, right? With here we are sending people home with computers and equipment, but you do what you've got to do. And our customers saw that we were doing that, and they appreciated that, right? That was, you know, at the beginning, it was all in a call center. Now it's the majority of it needs to be in your home, and then we have to monitor them from the call center. It was an amazing transition that our teams were able to do in a very, very quick time. You know, we often are told by that client that they appreciate how nimble we are and how quickly we react, right? Well, if you're not willing to jump when your customer calls, something's wrong, right? To me, every customer that calls, I don't care if it's a big customer or a small customer, we better jump and make sure that we take care of the needs of that customer. I think those are the things that have, you know, that have helped us during the pandemic, right? Fortunately for us, we did not have to lay off any of our employees. Wow. We were, yes, and that was a tremendous burden, trust me. But you know, we did not have to. And you know, they were so grateful, right? All of our employees were very grateful that most of them came back. You know, our admin teams, our accounting teams, our branch offices, all of them came back. We haven't lost anyone because of the pandemic. So I'm very, very proud to say that, but it did take a lot for us to do, you know, and what we did, you know, during those times too, is we looked at where were the gaps and what were we not doing that we should have been doing. This is where, you know, we kind of lead into your next question. So I'll just wait until that one and tell you a little bit more.
Well, thank you for sharing that, you know, response, because it's an actual experience that you've been dealing with, and I want to thank you for mentioning Lisa and Nicole. You mentioned your daughter Nicole, but both of them, I know you're partners. I want to thank Nicole Bolasoites, who serves on the board of the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Patty. So this is a multi-generation Hispanic Chamber family. And so thank you to her and your daughter, Lisa, for being your partners, which leads to our next question, and I want to thank, and it talks about the pandemic, the vaccine, and that's why, Patty, thank you for setting up the Open for Business Fund through Wells Fargo, because you all did not have to do that, to take your profits from the PPP and put them back into the community. So thank you, Patty, for your investment in having that holistic approach to rebuilding the economy that Rosa just mentioned, that, you know, we need to realize that sometimes we make decisions that on paper may not make sense, but in the long run help the economy and help our businesses succeed. And my last question, really, before I kick it to our great moderator, Laura, who we have a couple of questions in the chat. But Rosa, with vaccine distribution ramping up as fast as it has, over 100 million already throughout our country in less than 100 days, it seems that we're beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully. And if we can continue to social distance and continue to be safe, I think I speak for everyone when I say that we're beginning to see some relief in the economy and some growth, and that hopefully we'll be putting this pandemic behind us. But again, we need to be vigilant. However, many businesses have been battered over the course of the last year, as you and Patty know. And so, Rosa, what would be your advice? How do we heal to come out more resilient? This last year has been a rough year, like was said earlier by Patty. We didn't know it would last this long. You didn't know it would last that long. And for you to keep your employees on payroll during the toughest of the toughest times is not easy to do, but you prayed and you used your gut and you used your savings to do that, knowing that that employee, once things started up again, would be loyal and dedicated more than they ever have before. So I know it's a business decision that you made. So what would be your advice to our listeners of how we heal, how we come out more resilient over the last year and better prepared for the next challenge that, guess what? We don't even know what it is.
That's correct. That's correct. You know, Ramiro, I think most people that are listening would agree with me when I say that the pandemic has turned our businesses upside down and inside out. For us, healing is an interesting word, right? And as Patty said, as Latinas, all we know how to do is keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. We don't know how to stop. The pandemic is happening and all of these other things are happening, but we just keep going. We just, we're like the little Energizer bunny, right? Just keep going until the battery goes out. And so interestingly, when I think about, how do we heal? For me, honestly, healing is, going back to some of what we used to be. I think all of us know that we're never going to be the same, right? We're never going to be the same. This world is never going to be the same, I don't believe. But from a business standpoint is, what? Hopefully we take what we've learned from the past year and understand how to fill in the gaps for what was missing. So if we had it all to do over again and we knew the pandemic was coming next year, right? What should we be doing, right? We should be preparing, all of the financial stuff that I talked about, that Patty talked about, the data that we have to have ready, that should always be ready. And we should always, I feel like we all should always be prepared for the inevitable, because these kinds of things will keep happening. Hopefully not in our lifetime. Hopefully we won't have another pandemic, but this one's not over yet, right? So, I think it's really important to use the insights that we, of what we've learned, and put them in place, right, to fix any, anything that we weren't doing correctly. So if we didn't have our financials in order and we didn't get a loan, then what lesson did we learn from it? And how do we improve upon that, right? So this is where I want to talk a little bit about continuous improvement and Kaizen and that, none of us are perfect, right? We all set up our businesses differently. Some of us have the privilege that I had of coming from a large organization where I learned so much about business and I learned how to run a business. I didn't know how to set up a business, but I knew how to run a business. But if we just take, and some of us just, start a business because, our abuelita or abuelito had one and we want to have a little store or we want to have a restaurant, whatever, right? We're all in business. So I think, what we need to think about is how do we do better than what we did before, right? So, okay, I survived the pandemic. How do I move forward and what do I do differently? So I think the things to do, right, is, prepare better, financially prepare better. I have always been the kind of person that, and my banker will tell you that, I'm very risk averse when it comes to money. And what I'm going to do with our monies, right? And so if you're looking at a new venture, if you're, make sure you understand how it is that you're going to be able to make money in a new venture. I can't tell you how many people I talk to that say, "Oh, I want to start making masks," right? And then you don't really have a plan. You don't know who's going to manufacture it. You don't know how you're going to understand your cost of goods sold and if there's going to be any money left, right? I actually helped launch a mask company during the pandemic. An Asian friend of mine and her daughter, who's a biomedical engineer, wanted to. We're doing this as actually they were buying masks. You know her, Ramiro Ying McGuire.
Yeah.
They were buying masks to provide, to give to the medical community in Austin. And we started talking and long story short, we created a mask company. And we started to, Ying is very, very, good at understanding and knowing, obviously, right? Sales, cost of goods sold, who's going to manufacture, how we're going to bring it here and all of that. So she put this phenomenal spreadsheet together and that's critical. When you're going to start a business, you can't just say, I'm going to start making masks and see what I can get for them, right? You've got to have a plan about, how you're going to sell them. Are you going to sell them, retail? Are you going to wholesale them? What are the channels that you're going to sell them through? So there's so much more. And I think that's one of the things that we don't do as well ourselves is prepare. So plan and prepare as much as we can, have our financials easily available, ready for when that opportunity comes, and you can take it to your bank and, they can say yes or no. And it's not going to take very much for them to say no if you're not prepared. Right, Patty? I would think. So, the other things, I'm sorry, go ahead, Patty.
Well, absolutely, Rosa. And I think that your advice is so critical. I think that having a strong relationship, clear and honest communication and dialogue with your banker through good and bad times is critical in forming that bond and that strong relationship. I think that you have to be prepared. And sometimes many of our firms, we kind of have people in roles and they grow up with the firm, but then the firm the company starts growing, and then you may need more, kind of professional level assistance in your finance department or other departments. And you have to know that sometimes you're going to have to pay more for that. And, but it's going to be worth your while, upgrading the quality of your financial statements if you want to apply for, you know, a much higher level of credit. Those type of things are very important, and I think are some of the things that sometimes hold our businesses back. And so investment is definitely critical, but then also, you know, having a really good grasp and control over your financials, like you said, in your cash flow is very, very critical.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you for that input, Patty. And right to what you said, you know, ensure that, you know, your systems and your processes and all of those things, your systems particularly, right? You know, invest in systems. You know, there are so many different ways to do things better and easier now, right? And again, we may never go back to how we used to do stuff. I don't know that we'll ever go back to full-blown conferences, Ramiro, you know, like we used to have, where we enjoyed abrazos and all of that with each other. You know, hopefully we'll see each other again, right, at some point, but I don't know when that's going to be. And so we have to learn to conduct a sales presentation through Zoom, right, or through Teams. We have to learn to have a good discussion with either a new partner, a new business, or a new person looking for a job, right, with your company. So those are the things that we've done so much of. We worked really, really hard during the pandemic to think about and think ahead and understand what, you know, enhancements that we need to do and what improvements that we need to do to not only our processes, but our technology, you know, our HR systems, all of that. And I can tell you that in the last year and a half, we have probably made more investments in all of that than in the 19 years we've been in business. Wow. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that we had the time to do it, right?
Right.
Yes.
Well, Rosa, thank you for the pleasure of listening to what you and your businesses have been dealing with, and the counsel that you give to our small business owners who are tuning in. There's nothing, I believe, more important than having someone mentor you when you're in business or partner with you. And I know that all of us have mentors, as you and Patty know, Rosa, and I just want to thank you and Patty for the time you've shared in Patty's great presentation, and also the questions that she helped answer, and Rosa for the questions that you answered also in sharing something so personal. And last, your time. Your time is so valuable, and I love to tell people that we're all in the people business, no matter what we do. And so you stressed that earlier, Rosa, that you know, when somebody calls, we've got to take care of them, and that's true for both Wells Fargo and the Santana Group companies. So thank you both. We have about 10 minutes for some questions that have come in, and I wanted to ask our great moderator Laura Sosa who is ready to share some of the Q&As that have come in from our guests. Laura, muchísimas gracias.
Thank you. Yes, we have a question, so I'm going to read it. It's a little long, but I think it's necessary so that you can understand kind of the background. Building a great team of employees is critical, and especially as you scale and grow your business, you're likely to need more staff. Your relationship with them may not be as close as with previous team members, but everyone must realize the importance of your business values. Consistency and quality are paramount. Creating the right culture and an environment where people want to be and want to excel, then get out of the way and let them get on with it. All team members must be properly engaged, motivated, recognized, and rewarded. So what are the best approaches to accomplish this goal, as it is especially hard as you grow in the company?
It's a great question. I'll take a stab at it. You know, I think that what you need to do is create a culture and an environment that people can thrive in, and that where they come to work, they can bring their entire authentic self to work. For me, it is important to create a culture of inclusion where I want to hear every voice around the table on what are the things, the possibilities that we can all the ideas and thoughts around how we can help the business owners. And in many ways, I think creating that culture and environment is something that is so natural to me, because that's how I am. I like to take care of people. I consider myself my talent, my team. I'm like their sports agent. I'm going to make sure they get promoted. I'm going to make sure they get taken care of. I'm going to show them the money. I'm going to take care of them, because that is what you do as a leader and as a manager. And many times this leads to promotions and people leaving your team, and then you have a hole, and it is what it is. But I guess, if you become a leader that is known for fostering, an environment of inclusion, an environment of high performance, but also having fun while you're at it, I think that then you're also going to have talent coming in, as you're kind of pushing people out as they get promoted, because people are going to want to work for you. And what that does is that it allows people to really be top performers when they feel like they can bring their entire self to work, when they feel like their ideas are valued, when they feel like you dedicate time to them, like about their families, their goals, their dreams. If you don't know this, like, how are you supposed to work for them, right? And helping them achieve their development goals, their dreams, what they want to do. And so I think for me, it's a very important part of what I do, is fostering that environment. And I think we have a great responsibility as leaders to do that. And I think for me as a Latina, and I am the president of Latin Connection at Wells Fargo, so I represent the interest of 48,000 Latinos. When people come to me and they ask me for 30 minutes to just talk, I grant that, right? I am accessible, because I want to talk to our young millennials and talent that's coming in the door. I mean, we have such a robust pipeline of Latino talent. I mean, Latina millennials are graduating at faster rates of college than we've seen in 2 decades. I mean, it's like a 70% improvement. When you look at who's coming in the door, and if they look up and they don't see necessarily themselves reflected in the upper echelons of a company, that's going to be kind of something they scratch their head and they think, well, maybe I should go somewhere else where I can see, somebody that looks like me. And so you have to be visible. You have to be willing to spend time and invest in mentoring and sponsoring others. And if you achieve a certain level of success as a Latina leader, for me, I have an obligation and a responsibility to look back and pull other people up with me, right? I mean, there is no excuse for people that don't do that. And I frankly get really angry when I see folks that are just, not doing their part. And so people did that for me. I didn't get to my level, but, well, I mean, I did put a lot of work into it, and so there is that. You have to be a very hardworking person, but, in the end, we all get help and support from certain folks, and we have to be able to, give back. And so creating that environment, I think, makes for a winning team. And if you look at the data, companies are up to 30% more profitable if they have diverse teams as, part of their leadership, because they make better decisions. And so I think it's a no-brainer.
Fantastic. Rosa, any
I
thoughts on
can
that?
share just in a couple of minutes, if I may. So, for me, the way I would answer this question is through leadership by example, right? And I think if we exemplify what we expect, and Cindy, I think this is your question, and you already are doing so much. I see what you're doing, and I share your pain in the growth. When you have a lot of growth, and you're hiring people, and you have relationships with people that have been with you forever, how do you establish relationships to where people aren't made to feel like, oh gosh, she's close to the CFO or the, this person because they've been here with her forever. Or in my case, they're her daughters, right? Mm. Just so you know, in my business, my daughters don't call me mom. and we don't act like a mom and daughter business here. It's very professional. But going back to the question, what I've done and that keeps me somewhat connected, right, at all levels with our employees in all of the companies that we own is through communication, right? So we have an expectation that our leaders will take back the messages, that come from our leadership team to at every level, right? And as often as I can possibly do it, I am there connecting and talking to our people. And I will tell you that I never forget, we have a young lady in our manufacturing business that is a supervisor. She's almost a manager, right? She's a supervisor, and she started as a team member, as an assembler, if you will, and it was my responsibility, and I took that upon myself because she was doing so well, to ensure that she had whatever she needed to grow, right? And so now she's doing really well, but she told somebody one day that what she really appreciates about me is that every time I come to the plant, I'm asking about her kids. How's the family? How are the kids? She had a baby while she was working for us and all of that. And that just comes natural to me. It's not like, oh, I just do it because I have to do it. It's because I really want to know. I'm really interested. And so I think by doing those kinds of things and ensuring that your leaders are taking that connectivity back to them from you would be helpful. It helps in my case, but I will also tell you, Cindy, that the more you grow, the harder it is, right? So through your values, through your company values, which you have already, and your company culture, I think are ways to do it.
Thank you both for those excellent answers. Laura.
Yes. So we have one more question that I know Patty responded privately, but maybe you can also share it with all of us, Patty and Rosa. More Hispanic-owned businesses, I think, as more Hispanic business owners can get capital to grow, as the studies show, as there are 3 hurdles that hold back Hispanic business owners' economic growth: credit score problems, limited funding sources, and a business knowledge gap. What can Hispanic businesses do better to overcome these challenges? Rosa, maybe you want to start, or Patty?
Sure. I can take it first. I talked a lot about that, right? Obviously, you need to figure out, or know what you want to do. And if you don't have background or experience, then you have to surround yourself with people with those skill sets, right? It's like me, when I went into manufacturing, I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this, right? Well, I was very fortunate that I was provided a lot of help, a lot of mentoring by other people that I know that said, I'll mentor you, I'll help you, I'll do, and including, my customer. So that's very, very important. From the capital standpoint, we talked about that. And what was the other one? It was credit score, or so I talked about that as well. Make sure you're paying your bills on time. Make sure you're keeping your financial obligations, because why do you expect people to take a chance on you and provide financing to you if you don't take care of your obligations? I mean, honestly, it's as frank as that, right? For me, if we want to be in business, there are rules to the game, right? And one of them is make sure that you have your financial piece in order. And if you don't have any capital to invest, it's okay. I know there's ways to do it without capital, but make sure that from a personal standpoint, you have something to show for your good standing in that.
Yeah, and great points, Rosa. And I think that what I would say is there are many systemic barriers that have been around for many decades, and that have led to perhaps things not being an even playing field. There's lack of information and access, sometimes lack of networking and connection, definitely on the credit score issues. Latinos and Black African-American borrowers have been known to have, lower credit scores in general, which is why they get turned down more often. And I think that there's many things we could do around that. And Rosa points out some of the great things is like, we got to take responsibility. Take a look at your credit report. Take a look at what it is that's being reported about you. Make sure it's accurate. And if there are things there where you've fallen behind and you didn't pay something, you didn't meet an obligation that's affecting your score, you have to deal with that. And there are companies out there that help you improve your credit profile and your credit score. But you need to know that that's one of the main objectives. And we as Latinos, we so often, we'll go co-sign for a cousin or a tío or a prima or whatever. And then we'll, end up with, some default that leads you to have some additional issues. And so you really need to be conscientious about what that means to you, because access to credit, your first car, your first home, your first business loan is all going to be built upon that credit profile that you have established by your own actions and decisions. And you have to understand how those actions and decisions will impact in a positive or negative way your credit profile, and what that may mean in terms of you being able to secure the lending that you need. Certainly, I think a lot of us are responsible, and I know that the USHCC is also very active in understanding and addressing some of the systemic barriers that have led to that uneven playing field, and you can count on us to continue to fight that battle. But at the end of the day, personal responsibility, personal accountability is paramount in establishing, your credit profile. And one other thing is, we as Latinos, we are debt adverse. When I look at my clients and I'm like, your leverage is under 1. Like, yeah, buy that building, go get it. Like, it's fine. I'll make the loan tomorrow. Like, oh no, I don't want a loan. I literally have to do like a song and dance every time to convince and push business owners. As long as you're under 2 to 1 in your leverage, you're a healthy borrower. You look great. In fact, you're missing out opportunities. You continue to pay rent where you could buy the building like Rosa did, And so there's those conversations, whereas we are like, our tendency is to be debt adverse, to not owe anything to anybody. I don't want anybody, holding something over my head. Right. That's just us as Latinos, which is part of the reason our businesses aren't funded at the same rate or level. And so we have to look at definitely at the systemic issues and barriers, but then also our own personal actions and decisions that lead to opportunity or lack thereof, because we purposely are saying, no, I don't want to take that loan for that building. Now, when you do decide to take a loan out, be responsible about it. Don't get yourself into a deal that's locked for 10 years, and that if you come into money, you can't pay it down because you have some prepayment penalty. Like, really think about, right? Like, all the things that you're going to enter in terms of your financial commitments, so that you have adequate flexibility, so that if you do come into a huge order and you want to pay down something or pay it early, that you have the flexibility to do so, and make sure that you have a great relationship with that banker, the Noahs of the world, that they can explain to you, right, the pros and cons of the different scenarios when you're looking at different loan types that fit your needs.
Well, Patty and Rosa, thank you so much. Before I kick this back to Laura, we're very fortunate with your leadership in the corporate world, Patty, and Rosa, you in the Hispanic business enterprise world, and the example that you set for all of us. I feel like my personal credit score has gone up 20 points just listening to both of you. And so I just want to say on behalf of the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, muchísimas gracias a ustedes y a todos que nos acompañan. And with that, Laura, let me give this back to you. Thank you to Wells Fargo for sponsoring us. As Rosa said earlier, we do not take your support for granted, Patty. We know that it's sincere, and we appreciate it at the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And Rosa, thank you for your bold and honest leadership on our board of directors.
Absolutely. Muchas gracias, Ramiro. Thank you so much to our wonderful panelists, to Wells Fargo for making this webinar possible, and to all of you for taking the time to join us today. I hope you gain new ideas that you can start implementing today in your business. So don't forget to enter a chance to win the $25 gift card by completing the short 30-second survey that I just shared with you on the chat, and that I will also be sending to all the people that register after the webinar. Remember, your feedback is extremely important to keep bringing relevant content to all of you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.